All right, folks, Whiskey One here. Welcome to the Whiskey One channel, and we are on set at the AWS event for hosting Bourbon Pursuit. I have Kenny Coleman in the house. Good to see you, Kenny.
Thank you so much for having me, Israel. I'm glad to be a part of this.
You got it, man, and I appreciate you taking time out to talk a little whiskey with us. This is my first time meeting you, and I honestly had to think about the types of questions that I should ask you because from a fellow podcaster, YouTuber, I want to just pick your brain on techie stuff, but we will not do that here.
Yeah, we'll lose people real quick, won't we?
Yeah, you got it. So I'm just going to kind of dive right in, and I thought about this on the car ride here, and I thought long and hard about, like, why did I get into YouTubing? And it brought me back to whiskey passion, of course, but I can't really say the same thing for everybody, right? So my initial question is, what was the thing that pushed you to start a podcast YouTube channel?
Yeah, so you're right. It all does start with passion because for me, there was an evolution of just really getting into bourbon. And the bug bit me pretty bad. Around late 2013 is when I just started going ham. I'm talking what most people do, going to liquor stores, trying to find things. And really it was just an exploration of what all different types of whiskey and bourbons are out there that I want to try, because my staples were Kentucky Tavern, Very Old Barton, and Four Roses. And I said, there's got to be some more stuff out there. And I just started getting into it. I started buying, like a lot of us. Now we have more bottles of whiskey in our basement than we could ever drink in our lifetime. But there was my partner, Ryan. He's the one that actually came up with the idea for the podcast, because his job has him, and when he was doing it a lot, he owns a lawn fertilization and treatment company. So he's going around spraying and treating lawns in his truck all day, going back and forth, listening to podcasts. And he wanted to create a new winter project, and Jet was just creating a podcast. He didn't know it was going to be on, but his idea was that, well, and by the way, why he wanted to do it is because when it's either really hot outside or really cold outside, he's not working, because that's just the way that business is very cyclical. So he said, well, I'm going to create a podcast on my industry, which was essentially all that, talking to his peers, but he realized it might not have the runway that he kind of wanted. And actually his brother-in-law says, well, you're from Bardstown, the bourbon capital of the world. Why don't you do a bourbon podcast? And he goes, that's actually not a bad idea. He knew that I was in tech. I had a public speaking background, and of course I was really getting to bourbon. And so he asked me, and he said, what do you think? Do you want to do this? And I go, well, let's go ahead and let's kind of figure out what else is out there. And at the time, there was, of course, Whiskey Cast. Mark Gillespie does an amazing job, but there were other podcasts of just people sitting around a microphone, sniffing Elmer T. Lee, going like, oh, I get caramel and vanilla. And I go, there's got to be something better. Like, what else can we do that we can kind of figure out what's an angle that can really work? And that's when we started looking at the interview route. There was nobody that was bringing on the voices behind the industry to bring them on and have them tell their story. And so that's been a great recipe for success of what has really built Bourbon Pursuit, is really standing on the shoulders of giants and bringing all these industry titans on to kind of just talk about their story. I mean, anybody that listens to the show knows that, like, we're not breaking news. We're not talking about the latest releases. It's talking about the personalities and how people can really connect with the brands. And that's really been something that we've really focused on how we've made Bourbon Pursuit really like the place to go to for those types of stories, just to have them be a little bit, as I said, more connected with the brand, but they just want to have the stories and the connections, because I'm sure you've talked to a lot of people in the industry. There's amazing personalities, and we want to be able to help expose those to our audience as well.
Yeah, and I like that you pointed out that it's more about just sitting down and reviewing whiskey and walking away from it and understanding that there's people behind that product. There's people behind that brand. There's people that probably had a very long journey just to be able to put that juice in the bottle.
Yes.
And whiskey, I think people forget, is about telling a story, but having a story behind the whiskey. So I like that you pointed that out.
Everything is storytelling. And even to your point with that is that now that we've gone to this point where we're building and bringing and kind of like showcasing our own brand and really trying to build this thing, we've realized how hard it really is. And it's like, we will never say a bad word about somebody's whiskey on air ever, because there is so much passion and hard work and dedication that goes in behind the scenes that when you get to a point, and I hate using the word influencer, but when people do listen about what you say and they harp at every word, it's like one thing could really damage somebody. And so we look at that and we say, it's like we want to give praise where praise is due. But whenever somebody sends us something and they're like, oh, can you please review it, our 2.5-year-old whiskey? And we'll go, I'll tell you what, we will tell you privately in an email what we think about it, but we're not going to go on blast and tell everybody, because it's the internet. As soon as you put it out there, it's out there forever.
That's right. Yeah, and people talk, right? People definitely talk. I had a similar experience that I think I learned the hard way from, and that was, I am honest about the whiskey reviews, and I had a local brand ask me to review it, posted it on Instagram, and lo and behold, I got feedback.
Yeah.
That
not always in the positive light either, is it?
Right, that they didn't appreciate what I had to say. We've worked it out and talked it over, and we're good now, kind of.
Yeah.
But I've learned that that a lot of work does go into a product, even if I don't appreciate it, even if I don't like it, or maybe it's not my cup of tea or my dram of whiskey. I do need to take time to understand the passion, or at least the vision that went into that, and just take it for what it is, and appreciate that just being in the whiskey industry is a tough thing. Like, some of the people that are in it are working part-time jobs, or they work a full-time job, and they're doing this on the side just to start.
I'm raising my hand to show you that's exactly what we're doing. I mean, Ryan and I, we still have our day jobs as we're sitting here trying to build this brand. It's working 3 jobs to try to make it happen, and that's what people were like, oh, you're crushing it. It must be so awesome. Like, every day is like just a challenge, and we have yet to pay ourselves from this. But, we see where we're going and where the journey's heading, so we feel very confident in where Pursuit Spirits is going to go. It's like everything else. It's a slow build, and we're excited to kind of have that. And we're making new fans as we continue to help spread the gospel, get people to try it and stuff like that too.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I'm not a longtime fan of Bourbon Pursuit, and it's not because I've never decided to follow you guys, but there's a lot of people that are on YouTube, and I know I'm part of that, and I've heard of Bourbon Pursuit and that it was a podcast, but I never take the time to listen to podcasts.
Yeah, it's completely different.
So that's one of the reasons I didn't do it. But
well, I mean, to be fair, like, we went into a realm that was really unsaturated at the time, and I think that's why we've been so successful in the podcasting realm. I mean, we do some stuff for YouTube, but it doesn't hit like the podcast does. Like 90% of our listens all come from the podcast side, and I'm sure you figure out as well, video is a much more difficult dynamic, and you've got to be able to bring that in. And from a technical standpoint, it takes more time to be able to produce that stuff. And so that's when we actually decided a while ago to stop doing video podcasts, just because we could put more focus on the audio, because that's where everybody was listening to anyway.
And people tend to be a little bit more relaxed on audio than on camera. Like, I'll be honest right now, there's so many times I wanted to kind of scratch my face because the cottonwoods are spraying, right? Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, I keep touching my face. It's going to drive people nuts.
It's a conversational thing, so it's fine.
All right, so I do have my next leading question. And because I've noticed that you have several different guests in the industry and people talking about either their brand or their journey in the industry, what is the one guest or guests that stood out to you the most, that you felt like, I can't wait to get this person back on the podcast and talk more with us?
Yeah, of course, there's a handful of them. I would say one of the most recent ones was, I'm blanking on her name, from Heaven Hill. Here, Lauren, who's from Heaven Hill that we had on, your old boss? Susan Wall, thank you. That's my wife in the background. She's got a better memory than me. So Susan Wall, she's the director of all bourbon for Heaven Hill, and we just talked about the future of bourbon and where they see it going and why they're investing so much into it. And as soon as we recorded that, my mind was blown, and I said, like, I can't wait to put that out there. But then there's also other episodes that we've done where it's actually kind of surreal when you think about it. Like, we've had people on the show that are now no longer with us, and the show serves as a digital archive of somebody's life that we could have them on. Al Young from Four Roses. And I mean, we've had a few people. Buddy Thompson was one of the great ones that we had on, and I'm just like, I go through and I'm like, this is really cool. People have never heard their story. They can go and find those, and they can go listen to them. And this is actually a legit story that happened from Buddy Thompson. I'm on, so Ryan and I still have our day job, so I'm on my work Slack. And this lady sends me a message out of the blue, and she was like, "Hey, are you Kenny Coleman from Bourbon Pursuit?" I'm like, "Yeah." She was like, "Well, that's awesome. Like, I'm getting ready to head to Kentucky for my fiance's grandfather's funeral." And it was Buddy Thompson. And she goes, nobody had any idea of what he did in his life until somebody shared the podcast, and everybody went and listened to it and watched it. And we all were able to understand how influential he and how major he really was in the industry. And so it's really kind of cool to have those moments happen when you don't think about it. But years later, somebody just says like you have the only record of something that we have to be able to go and reference of a relative. So just to those are just like give you goosebumps a little bit when you think about it. And those are just the cool little moments.
Well, I happened to listen to one of your video podcasts where you met with one of the Russells from Wild Turkey.
Yeah.
And I found the story just intriguing in that short amount of time that he explained that when he went to the distillery and he saw Granddad's office, he got a sense that was the boss man, right? Mm-hmm. And then his father, which is his son, didn't have that office, and he told the story of how it took a while for him just to really get to know his father and his grandfather, and that was the way he did it.
Yeah, I mean Bruce, Eddie, and Jimmy, like they're fantastic people, for sure, salt of the earth, and I just love having them on because every single time we have them on, like they tell a story that at some point they didn't know about each other, and it's just they end up revealing more about themselves when you get them in a situation like this because. For the most part, they don't go home and talk about stuff. Like they go home to their normal everyday lives. That's what people understand. It's like a normal everyday life. But when you get them in this sort of situation, they really start opening up and sharing things, especially for rough and tough men who don't want to share their feelings.
That's right. Yeah, that was another thing that resonated with me is that he said just that he didn't know his father to really talk a lot about himself and to be very reserved. So the fact that he got to know his father through the industry, through making whiskey.
Yeah, Eddie talks about that all the time, about how Jimmy would never talk about anything when he came home until he went on the road with him one time, and he said he probably didn't hear his dad say 10 words to him growing up until he actually started getting into the whiskey industry himself.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'm going to move along. So, Pursuit United, right? What is the whiskey that you're most excited about that's coming, either that's already been out or that's coming?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is that we're really ecstatic about just our 4 core SKUs that we have right now, and really just growing and amplifying that. We feel that like we went on a limb and tried to create something that was really for our audience of whiskey enthusiasts, because most people, when they create a whiskey, they'll come out with their flagship at 83 or 85 proof or whatever it is, and it might be 2 to 3 year old whiskey, and they'll build from there. Like, we went the other way. Like, we came out with something that is 108 proof, a 3-state blend that was really trying to capture that whiskey geek, and now we're on the mission to kind of really help build and expand that. And from there, it's just really going to be like, we're going to have that core staple, but then from there, we've got our oak collection that we're building out, and that's where we start getting into the finish series and everything like that as well, which, of course, those are great and everything, but that's a different dynamic, because today's whiskey drinker is definitely varying and changing. Like, everybody's either chasing toasted or chasing honey, or God forbid you're chasing Ambarana. Those are those things that like we want to be very careful about what we're doing, because we still want the artistry and mastery behind the blending to kind of still shine through. So in regards to product, I mean, like I said, we'll be able to taste them all tonight. I'm excited to kind of hear what your favorite's going to be out of it. But, between the four, I'm still just really big on our core bourbon. I think we create something that is unique, it's different, it's not like anything else that's out there on the market. And I hope that's one of the things that we can help resonate with people, is that we're just not getting it from one distillery and putting it in a bottle. Like, this is a very intentional way to do things. We have 4 partner distilleries that we're working with. We're transparent to a fault about our mash bills and who we're working with. But our IP and our secret sauce is all in the blend, because we truly do think that we're creating a unique product that nobody else has.
Well, I will just tell you, I'm a bit biased towards the rye finished in French oak.
Oh, it's good.
It is, so far it's the only one that I've had. So tonight I'm interested to see how that one will fare against the other 3.
Yeah.
But I got into that bottle. Daniel actually told me, hey, that's from the Bourbon Pursuit guy. So I was like, well, let me try it, because I do have a bottle, and it's obscure. It's an obscure bottle, but it's a Balcones Texas rye cast strength called Funky Town. Taking the Funky Town that you guys actually picked.
That was a funky one.
And it is funky, but it's delicious. So knowing that, okay, I know you know how to pick a good rye, I wanted to see what you had in store for that finished rye there.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, that finished stuff. The cool thing, and we'll get into it more when we do the presentation later, is that, as I mentioned, everything we do is very intentional, because to actually get to doing our finished series, I mean, we go through about 30 to 50 different experiments with different types of wood that we do on the whiskey to figure out this is how we want to bottle it, this is how we want to package it, versus most other people, they'll go and they'll buy a bunch of port barrels or, sherry barrels or whatever it is, and they'll dump their whiskey in it and hope for the best. But we have a very calculated method on how we know what our whiskey's going to taste like. So we do a lot of testing to be able to make sure that happens and does it properly.
So I would imagine that as a blender, right, because that's what you guys are doing, that you have a whole lot more flexibility with what you decide to put out, right? Because you're not dedicated to the thing that you've took the time to distill it. As a blender, you can actually sample and try different whiskeys, different barrels, and just have your way with it. It seems like a lot more flexibility.
Well, I mean, when we first started it, for sure, because we were able to be very meticulous on who we wanted to work with, what was the pipeline of barrels, what mash bills are available. And from there, we kind of said, all right, now we have to scale this baby up. And so that's when we started working with all our partner distilleries and putting down the same exact mash bills, but now we're starting to play with different char levels in the barrels. And yes, we do take our existing barrel inventory and we hand select and taste every single barrel to know exactly which one's going to go in flagship, which one's going to go in oak collection, which one could be a single barrel, and so on and so forth. So that's the fun part about having a whiskey company, is you get to taste absolutely everything. Yeah. But at the same exact time, it does make the blending process a little bit more difficult, because we do have like our United products, like we want to keep them as consistent as possible. And it's difficult because when we do this working with different partner distilleries, we don't get to go, well, we need it in warehouse H facing the north side on level 4. No, it's like they're sticking them in a place that's available, and we'll see in 4 to 6 years.
Right.
And so we have to be able to go and taste test every single one of those to figure out exactly what profile is it going to fit in and where is it going to go.
So on that note, what would you say are your biggest barriers coming from your angle, right? You are a podcaster, right? We're influencers, right?
I hate that word, but yes.
But I mean, you start out as an influencer or as a podcaster, and now you're in this whiskey realm with all the big boys and big girls that, they have a lot of namesake. I'll just throw out Jack Daniels because I'm staring at a Jack Daniels barrel. So what are the biggest barriers for you going forward?
This is an easy one, because when we started this company, we said, if we put great whiskey in a bottle, it's going to sell. We're wrong. Half of everything you do in the whiskey world is all in marketing. So we put 100% of our money into the whiskey and not really anything to marketing. And that's where we realized that we need to start kind of crawling back and changing that a little bit, because we did. I mean, we put all our eggs in the basket of the whiskey. Like right now, when you're listening to this, like we're currently $4 million in debt. with around another 4 or 5 more million to go until we start seeing the other side of it. So,
By the way, that's pretty scary when you say that.
It is. And so me and Ryan are the only owners of the company. All the banknotes are in our name. Like, we're a true startup, so we're trying to do this fully self-funded without having to take on partners or anything like that. So all, like I said, it's all based on loans and stuff like that. But that is one thing that we're trying to shift and chart. We got to start figuring out, like, how do we change the marketing angle? Because if you put the bottle on the shelf, nobody knows who we are. Like, the podcast is such a very niche focus that 95% of bourbon drinkers don't know who we are, right? So we have to sit there and find, how do we get in front of the people that don't know us, or even the people that do know us and they go, oh, well, it's just another 4 to 6 year old bourbon. But we've got to have them try the product and actually understand the story, that what we're doing and putting out there, it's just, we're not a celebrity whiskey brand, right? Like, we actually care.
I was just about to ask you, has anybody approached you and said, or just, you heard through the grapevine, oh, these guys are just another celebrity brand? Because that's got to feel a little surreal.
That's what we have to go and put the kibosh on that one, because we're definitely not a celebrity bourbon brand. Yeah, we have to make sure that we understand, like, we try to say, like, you're one of us, like, we're one of you, like, we are whiskey geeks at the end of the day, and that's what our product is for. It's not to sit there and try and make a buck off our name. Like, it's very intentional on how we wanted to build a product and build a brand, and like, now we're on this roller coaster and kind of figuring out where it's going to be in the next few years.
Well, I'm just going to put it out there that I feel the passion behind your story, and I'm looking forward to trying the rest of those whiskeys, because I already felt that finished rye is there's some thought and balance that went into it. Oftentimes when I come across a finished whiskey, you get the flavors that you're anticipating, but it oftentimes comes out a little unbalanced. And I feel that the Pursuit United rye finished in French oak is very balanced. And that's one of the things that me and, matter of fact, Terry, who's sitting there, we got to try it together, and we all felt the same way, that it's balanced. There's not this one thing that's just dominating the room. It's all put well together, and you don't do that without a high level of passion. So I just want to put that out there.
Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, it's definitely making me a little bashful, but yes, no, it's getting the red flutters going on a bit. No, I definitely appreciate that, and it's true. It's one of those things that everything we do, as I said, it's very intentional. It's done with passion, because we really care about the end product. And that was when I said, like, one of the difficult things that we're trying to figure out is that we know we have a great product, but we really lacked in the marketing side, and so we're trying to crawl back and really kind of fix that, because, yes, it's very hard to compete with the marketing budgets of the big six and everybody else out there, and so it takes a lot of money and a lot of sometimes actually giving away a lot of whiskey just to start getting your name out there.
Yeah, I know. So I don't give away too much whiskey. Sometimes I give whiskey away to make new friends, but I oftentimes I've already started to learn there's a lot of giveaways you got to do to put yourself out there. So I know what you're talking about, but I don't know what you're talking about as far as giving away a lot of whiskey. So maybe one day there'll be some whiskey out there. I have one last question, because I know you got to get going.
Fire away.
What is the one question that you wish people would ask about you or your brand, that you want others to know about the most, that people just haven't asked you yet?
That's a great question. I mean, people do a really good job of asking us about, the source and everything like that, and we're super transparent about it. I guess if there's one thing that people would want to ask, it's like, what's the future? Like, what's the future going to hold, or like, where are you guys going to go? Because I love talking about the operations of the back end, and and you'll get when we do our presentation tonight, like, I'm a very technical person, and I miss a lot of, like, the romantic side of whiskey and telling the story and all this other kind of stuff, and I start getting into the nuts and bolts and stuff like that. So if people want to always ask me technical questions, and in the operations side, fire away, because I can tell you about all the highs and lows of running a bourbon business, and it's not all rainbows and kittens. I can tell you that right now.
So a lot more lows than highs, at least for now. Right?
At least for now. I mean, to be fair, you get your small wins, and you'll take them when they come. But yes, for the most part, you definitely have some days when you're going, Oh gosh, like seeing somebody just buy us out and put us out of our misery, right?
Well, maybe you're hoping for that. I don't know.
I mean,
see
here's
a lot
the thing.
of brands do that.
Here's the thing. We will never turn down the phone call, but that phone call has not come yet. So
Gotcha.
we'll have to wait. And plus, we want to make sure we get a little more market penetration, more bottle sales, and more people talking about us. I think that's one of those things. It's like we want to be more better in our top line revenue and making sure that we look good from a financial standpoint, because right now we've got a lot of money invested, and a lot of that's just in inventory. I mean, we've got 4,000 barrels currently, and we should have in the next few years, we'll have a rotating inventory around 10,000 barrels.
That's not small. So that's I mean
it's a
compared
drop,
to the big boys,
it's a drop
but-
in a bucket compared to the big boys, but that's one of the things about, and I'll get into a little bit of the technical side, is that, Ryan and I were 100% owned in this company, and we know that in the next few years we're going to be about a 50,000 case brand. And when I say next few years, like that's 2028, 2030 projections. And that's about the size that we feel that we can still manage it on our own without having to really go big. As soon as you go past that, it needs more people, more inventory, more salespeople, and all this other kind of stuff. And you go, like, we did the numbers, like we're comfortable with where we can be there, but it would take somebody else to come in and actually have to really take it to the next level, because would be beyond Ryan and I's capability.
But that's probably the point where you get to quit your
day job. Oh yeah. We've got it kind of mapped out. I'm hoping in the next, hopefully 2 years, maybe we can start doing that transition. But as my wife would say, I have no capacity to understand exactly how much health insurance actually costs if I have to pay for it on my own. So those are the things. You got health insurance, you got stock options, and all this other kind of stuff that a great job pays you, and then all of a sudden I'm trying to go off and build a startup, and she's trying to reel me back in little by little.
Wives, the voices of reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Kenny. So thank you so much for honestly taking the time out of your your day to meet with me. It's been great to meet you and talk with you, and I hope it's not the last time we get to meet and talk whiskey. I would certainly like to follow your journey and see where this goes in the next couple of years.
Well, thank you, Israel. I definitely appreciate it. Being able to come in here and talk about this on your platform, I don't take it lightly, because I know exactly on your side the amount of effort that it goes in producing a show like this and getting this out there. So I can speak to it from all angles. So I can definitely say thank you for the work that you put in producing a show, because I know it's not easy, and it is a second job at the end of the day. There's a lot of time that's dedicated into it, and it takes a long time to find an audience, and it's just something that you continually do. So more power to you, and keep it going.
Yeah, I appreciate you calling that out, because that's oftentimes what I wrestle with. Like, is this really worth my time?
Sometimes you feel like you hit a wall. You go, is this even worth it? But every once in a while, as I said, you get those small wins that keep drawing you back, and you're going like, all right, I think this is what's going to take. I think we're going to go to the next level.
Well, this is definitely going to push me to keep going. So again, I appreciate you doing this.
For sure. Thank you again.
Well, cheers, and I hope to run into you again during the event.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, my name's Kenny Coleman. Thank you again for having me here. So this all started with a podcast. And I think that's the craziest thing to think about all this. I mean, we're not guys that had trust funds or sold a business and came a bunch of money and said, oh, let's go start a brand, or we didn't come from some distilling heritage or legacy. Like, everything we do is built off of passion. So, yeah, I agree. So, sometimes we do in-store tastings and people were like, oh, orange flavored whiskey? We're like, no, that's a tasting note. So this was something that we had never anticipated. By the way, we'd never anticipated to kind of be here with our own whiskey. It seems like a logical extension of what you would have done, but it was a complete transition of what we actually intended to do. The original idea actually started from my business partner, Ryan Cecil. Me and Ryan, we both have our day jobs as we're still trying to build this, so it is true passion, hustle, and everything like that goes into it. So his brother goes, well, Ryan, you're from Bardstown, the bourbon capital of the world. Why don't you do a podcast on bourbon? And he goes, it's actually not a bad idea. And he said, would you be interested in kind of starting this podcast with me? And I'm kind of like a dream killer at most of the days. Like, people come in with ideas. And so we looked at it and we said, well, how can we give a voice to these people and really kind of have people connect with the brand. And that's really been a recipe for success for Bourbon Pursuit. The idea of this, as I mentioned before, it seemed like a natural extension to be able to say, let's put out your own whiskey. Well, it was really a fateful phone call on how this all happened. This guy goes, hey, I helped build that brand. Would you be interested in starting your own? Okay, tell me more. Well, he goes, I'm a barrel broker based out of Memphis, Tennessee. Depending on the day, I got 2,000 to 5,000 barrels in inventory. And you can come and hand select whatever you want, and we can bottle it. And we're like, sounds like a decent idea. Let's figure this out. So as I mentioned, we got a really raw opportunity to be able to do something that's very unique and actually hand select every single barrel. So we felt really confident doing that. Through over time, we started utilizing Pursuit Series as a way to start experimenting and collaborating with different smaller craft distillers. And so we started creating relationships with them. There's also a lot of great bourbon made outside of Kentucky too. And that's where we started leaning into it and saying, well, let's go find some of the best flavors and some of the greatest whiskey that's out there, people that want to partner with us to help build this story. So I know I've talked a lot. Here's the first whiskey, so let's go ahead and start drinking. So this is Pursuit United. This is our flagship offering. This is the one that kind of started it all for us. This is great. It's not 101, and it's one better than 107. I'm talking about United. So the idea of United is that what we are doing is we are bringing in different whiskeys from different states, different distilleries, different mash bills, different aging climates to create our own unique bespoke flavor profile. Very excited to be able to take our whiskey that we're kind of blooming and blossoming to kind of already get those accolades out there. So cheers, everybody.
All right, folks. So that wraps it up for tonight. We had just a great time trying some Pursuit United whiskeys. They had the flagship bourbon, the flagship rye, and of course their oak series bourbon and rye. I kind of came into this event with the favorite already, and that was the sherry finished rye, the French Riviera oak. And it's just a phenomenal rye. I think their rye whiskeys all around are just solid anyway. After tonight, I think I'm walking away with a lot more appreciation for the bourbon, their flagship bourbon. It's just really good. A really close number 2. So that does it for us tonight. A lot of good stories shared. A lot of whiskey was spoken tonight, and we thank Daniel for the invite and Kenny for taking some time out to talk with us. And here at Whiskey One, we hope you guys continue to support us. But always remember this: it's about the one you enjoy. Cheers.